So I'm going to do a little exercise with you, a guided visualization, to help you think about this idea in a slightly different way. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and sit comfortably and take a couple of deep breaths. And I want you to imagine that you're very, very old and you're approaching the end of your life. And you walk out to a favorite park to sit on a favorite park bench. And you're carrying a mug with you. And the air as you walk over to this bench is so clean and pure to breathe. And before you sit down on the bench, you bend down and you scoop your mug into a creek that goes right by the bench. And then you sit down on the bench and you take a sip of that water, which is so clean now. And you can drink it without worry. In this world, we have solved many of our problems. There are no more wars. Nobody starves to death anymore. If people have prejudices, they don't act on them, not very often. We've restored our environment. Species are no longer becoming extinct at such a rapid pace. And we treat other animals with respect and compassion. It's a pretty good world at the end of your life. And while you're sitting there drinking your creek water, a child comes up and sits down on the bench with you and asks if she can talk to you. And this child says that she's been learning in her history class about some of the grave threats that humans faced and some of the terrible problems and harms that humans caused. And she turns to you and she says, "Our world is so good now. What role did you play in helping to bring about this better world? What do you want to be able to say to that child?" So when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So I think that if we can really answer that child, that's part of our epitaph. So I'll leave you with that and move on to the next key. The next key is to pursue joy through service. Now, initially, when I was thinking about this key, I actually thought of it as two keys: to pursue joy and to be of service. And the reason why I thought of joy as its own key, well, let me ask you a question. How many of you in this room consider yourselves to be activists or change makers of some sort? Okay, a number of you. And how many of you in your work in change making have found that some of your colleagues and fellow activists and change makers are angry, are often despairing or sad? Okay. So I've certainly found that in my work. Lots of anger, lots of misanthropy, lots of frustration, lots of rage, and lots of depression and sadness. And I realized that pursuing joy was really important because, you know, who wants to join a club of angry, depressed, and sad, rageful people? Not too many. You know, it doesn't really draw people in. So it seemed that pursuing joy was a really important component to a MOGO world, not only because it's MOGO for you to be joyful, but also because if you're joyful, many more people are going to want to join you in helping to create a better world. So I did this very, very unofficial survey where I sent out an email to hundreds of people and asked, what brings you joy? And what was amazing was how many people told me that service brought them joy in one way or another. And, you know, I really wasn't sure what people were going to say. I mean, it's possible that people could have said, you know, my pesticide-sprayed lawn really gives me a lot of joy, or my Hummer is my favorite thing, it brings me so much joy. But that just didn't happen. Over and over again, people wrote about service. And I want to read what one person wrote, because it was just so well said. Service brings me joy. It has been the organizing principle of my adult life, informing my career decisions and my spiritual and political beliefs. On many days, it has been what gets me out of bed in the morning. It has brought extraordinary people into my life and has provided me with opportunities to see and do things I never could have imagined. And so once I started getting all these responses, not everybody said service, but so many people did, that once I started getting those responses, I just turned it into one key: pursue joy through service. I mean, if service really brings joy to this many people, then hey, maybe we can all try it and see if it works. But there's a little caveat, which is that it's really important to find the right ways to serve. So my son went to this alternative Waldorf school on the Blue Hill Peninsula, and we parents were encouraged very strongly to be active volunteers in the school, which was great. That's how the school runs. And one of the ways that we were often called upon to help was baking cookies for different bake sales and fundraising and events and festivals. And so I would get all the calls. I don't know why nobody ever called my husband, but they didn't. They always called me. And I am the designated cook in my family, and I'm happy to do that, but I really don't like doing extra cooking. And so I would get these requests, and I would comply, because otherwise I'd feel really guilty, but I never experienced any joy in providing those cookies. You know, I think I probably came with like, here are my cookies. All right, happy? So that was not the right form of service for me. But years later, when my son actually got to the middle school, the school was very eager to have me do what I'm doing with you right now, humane education programs for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so I began going into the school, and I do week-long programs for about an hour and a half each morning. Well, in the amount of time that I put into preparing, going, teaching, following up, all of that, I could have baked so many hundreds and hundreds of cookies. But I loved every minute of what I was doing. I experienced so much joy teaching those kids. In fact, I experienced so much joy teaching those kids that a year and a half ago, when I was teaching the 8th grade, I had shingles. Has anybody here ever had shingles? Really painful, right? So painful. But while I was teaching, you know, I'd be sort of limping to get there, and I couldn't even, it was on my back, I couldn't even like lean back in my car, it was too painful. And I get into the class and I start teaching, no pain, none, zero pain. And as soon as it was over and I closed the door and I walked out, like, it was as if somebody with a sledgehammer just come against my back. The pain was right back. So joy actually provides all these endorphins, and so it's great for us, it was great for the kids, and it wasn't cookies. So it's really important to find the right ways to be of service, because when you find that, then you experience that joy, when you find that right match. Okay, we're moving on. It's going to be a whirlwind going through these 7 keys. The next key, key number 3, is to make connections and self-reflect. Now, what do I mean by making connections? Well, earlier I talked about my laptop and about these systems that are in place and how we don't know where our food and our clothes and our products come from. So in order to make MOGO choices, we actually have to seek out that knowledge, which is hard and challenging at times, but which is the only way to do it, is to make connections between our choices and their effects on other people.